The tension in the courtroom was suffocating. Every breath felt heavy, every eye fixed on what was about to unfold. At the bench sat the judge, a stern woman in her late 50s, infamous for her ruthless judgments. She peered over her glasses, her expression a mix of disapproval and amusement, as her sharp voice sliced through the silence. "Mr. David Miller," she began, her tone dripping with condescension. "You've chosen to represent yourself in a case of grand theft auto and resisting arrest. Are you absolutely sure you don't want an actual lawyer? This isn't a game, young man." David, an 18-year-old with a frame too thin for his oversized second-hand suit, rose to his feet. His hands trembled, but when he spoke, his voice was steady, surprisingly steady. "Your Honor, I fully understand the seriousness of this case. I've reviewed the evidence. I am prepared to defend myself." A ripple of laughter echoed from the gallery. Even the prosecutor, a veteran lawyer with a razor-sharp suit and an even sharper tongue, smirked, barely hiding his amusement. The judge raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Confidence is one thing, Mr. Miller. Competence is another. Let's see how far your self-taught legal skills take you." Mr. Grayson, the prosecutor, stood and adjusted his tie with smug precision. "Your Honor, the state is ready. The evidence against the defendant is overwhelming. Eyewitness accounts, video surveillance. This is, frankly, an open and shut case." David's heart pounded, but his face remained unreadable. He wasn't just fighting for his freedom. He was fighting against a system that had already judged him guilty. He had spent weeks buried in legal textbooks, studying precedents, dissecting every piece of evidence. This wasn't just survival, it was war. As Grayson launched into his opening statement, David's eyes scanned the jury. Skeptical faces, crossed arms, doubtful gazes. He glanced at the judge. She was already doodling in her notepad, barely pretending to care. They all thought this was a joke, a boy playing lawyer, but they had no idea what was coming. The prosecutor called his first witness, Officer Daniels, the arresting officer, a broad-shouldered, gruff man. Daniels walked to the stand with the confidence of someone who believed this was already over. On the night in question, Daniels began, "I responded to a report of a stolen vehicle, black sedan, matching the description. Upon arrival, I witnessed the defendant attempting to hotwire the car. I identified myself as law enforcement and ordered him to stop. Instead, he fled on foot. After a brief pursuit, I apprehended him." David scribbled notes furiously, his gaze sharp, dissecting every word. Then, rising slowly for the cross-examination, the nervous boy was gone. In his place stood someone different, calm, focused, deliberate. "Officer Daniels," David began, locking eyes with him. "You claim you saw me attempting to hotwire the car? Could you describe precisely what you saw?" Daniels paused, a flicker of hesitation. "I saw you leaning into the driver's side window, holding what appeared to be a tool. You were fumbling with wires." David nodded slowly. "And how far away were you when you witnessed this?" "About 20 feet, Daniels replied. David paused, letting the silence press on every corner of the room. 20 feet at night. "And you're certain you saw me holding a tool and fumbling with wires?" Daniels shifted in his seat. "Yes, I'm certain." David turned to the judge, his voice crisp. "Your Honor, may I approach the witness?" For the first time, the judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing, curiosity beginning to replace her boredom. "Proceed," she said. David took a step forward, and the battle had truly begun. David walked confidently toward the witness stand and handed Officer Daniels a photograph. "Officer, this is the car in question. Can you point out where the wires are located?" Daniels frowned, studying the image. "There, inside the dashboard." "Exactly," David said, turning sharply toward the jury. "The wires are inside the dashboard, not visible from outside the car. So how could Officer Daniels have seen me fumbling with wires through a closed window, from 20 feet away, in the dark?" The courtroom erupted in murmurs as the prosecutor jumped up. "Objection, Your Honor, speculation." But David didn't flinch. "Your Honor, if the prosecution's entire case relies on something that's physically impossible, then their whole narrative collapses." The judge leaned forward, her curiosity finally overtaking her skepticism. "Overruled. Continue, Mr. Miller." David turned back to Daniels. "Officer, you also claimed I fled when approached. Did you identify yourself as law enforcement before pursuing me?" Daniels shifted uncomfortably. I believe I did." David raised an eyebrow. You believe, isn't it standard procedure to clearly identify yourself before engaging a suspect? Daniels stammered, yes, but thank you, no. Further questions, David cut him off as Daniels stepped down, leaving the jury exchanging uneasy glances. The cracks in the prosecution's case had started to show. The next witness, Mrs. Thompson, the car's owner, testified she had parked her car outside her house that night, woke to find it missing, and later learned the defendant was caught in it. During cross-examination, David asked, "Did you witness the theft yourself?" "No, I was asleep," she admitted. "And when the police found the car, broken windows, damaged locks?" "No," she frowned. "The car was intact." David turned back to the jury. "So, a car, stolen with zero signs of forced entry. How did the thief get in?" Mrs. Thompson hesitated. I don't know. Maybe they had a key. David tilted his head. "Who else has access to your car keys?" "Just me and my husband," she replied. David nodded, pausing deliberately. "Thank you. No further questions." As she stepped down, David turned to the judge. "Your Honor, the defense calls Mr. James Thompson, Mrs. Thompson's husband." The prosecutor shot up. "Objection. The defense never disclosed this." Witness David calmly countered, "Your Honor, this testimony is crucial to understanding the truth." The prosecution had ample time to investigate. The judge considered for a moment and then waved her hand. Overruled. Proceed. Mr. Thompson, tall, nervous, visibly sweating, took the stand. "Mr. Thompson, do you own the black sedan?"
Yes.
"And do you have access to the keys?"
Yes.
David pressed forward. "On the night in question, did you lend your car to anyone?" Mr. Thompson glanced nervously at his wife. "I lent it to my nephew Alex. He needed it for a date." The courtroom exploded in shocked whispers. Mrs. Thompson looked stunned. "So the car wasn't stolen, it was lent, correct?" "Yes." David turned to the jury, his voice sharp. "Ladies and gentlemen, the entire grand theft auto charge is built on a lie. There was no theft. The car was borrowed." The prosecutor scrambled to object. "Your Honor, whether borrowed or not, the defendant was found in the vehicle without permission." But David didn't wait. "If the car wasn't stolen, Your Honor, the entire premise of this case collapses. The prosecution is fabricating guilt where there is none." The judge leaned back, arms folded, eyes narrowing with interest. "Continue, Mr. Miller." David turned back. "Mr. Thompson, one last question. Did you inform the police that you lent the car to your nephew?" No. I didn't think it was important," Mr. Thompson stammered. "Thank you. No further questions." As he stepped down, the courtroom was now in chaos. The prosecution's case was crumbling. In desperation, the prosecutor called his final witness, Detective Harris, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for precision. "Your Honor," Harris began, "we have video footage from a nearby security camera showing the defendant entering the vehicle that night. This clearly places him at the scene." David's pulse quickened, but his hands were steady. He had prepared for this, rising for cross-examination. He asked, "Detective, does the footage clearly show the person's face clearly?" Detective Harris hesitated, shifting in his seat. "No. The footage is grainy. The person's face isn't clearly visible." David nodded slowly, pacing before the jury. "So the footage doesn't conclusively identify me as the person entering the car, correct?" Harris cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable. "That's correct, but the figure's clothing and build match your description." Without missing a beat, David turned to the judge. "Your Honor, may I approach the witness?" The judge nodded. David walked up and handed Harris a document. "Detective, this is a still frame from that footage. Can you point out exactly where the person's face is clearly visible?" Harris squinted at the image, then shook his head. "As I said, the face isn't clearly visible." David pivoted toward the jury. "So the prosecution's key piece of evidence, their strongest claim, fails to definitively prove I'm the person in the video. Isn't it entirely possible that someone else is in that footage?" The prosecutor shot to his feet. "Objection, Your Honor. Speculation. The defendant is attempting to mislead the jury." But David stood firm. "Your Honor, if the prosecution's entire argument rests on assumptions rather than verifiable facts, then their case isn't just weak, it's fiction." The judge, leaning forward, her curiosity now fully piqued, waved her hand. "Overruled. Continue, Mr. Miller." David nodded. "Detective, did you investigate any other leads? Specifically, did you consider that the person in the footage might be Mr. Thompson's nephew, Alex?" Harris fidgeted, then admitted, "No. We focused solely on the defendant based on the initial report." David smiled thinly. "Thank you, detective. No further questions." As Harris stepped down, the jury exchanged glances. The doubt was spreading. The prosecuting